if the greatest hero of humanity was never truly human, before anyone discovered the truth, before the blood test, before the betrayal, there was only one name echoing across the battlefield, like a promise of survival: Orion Vellin. In the 23rd year of the interplanetary war, when entire solar systems had already fallen silent, Orion was not just a commander, he was a symbol. While cities burned under alien bombardment and orbital colonies drifted lifeless through space, his fleet was the only one that never retreated. When human morale collapsed, his victories stitched it back together. When hope fractured, he became its armor. Soldiers didn't just follow him, they believed in him. They said he had something unnatural in combat, a precision that bordered on prophetic. He anticipated enemy maneuvers before they happened. He adapted faster than military AI. He survived battles that should have erased him from existence. The media called him the shield of Earth. The Kelthor called him something else. They called him the anomaly. But Orion never saw himself as extraordinary. To him, war was not destiny, it was normal. He had no memory of a peaceful sky. No childhood stories. Untouched by loss, he was found as an infant in the wreckage of a shattered orbital station, one of the first casualties of the Kelter invasion. No surviving family, no historical records, just a child wrapped in debris and silence. A miracle, they said, a survivor chosen by fate, adopted by General Marcus Vallon, one of the founding architects of the United Fleet. Orion grew up inside military fortresses instead of homes. His playground was a training deck. His lullabies were distant explosions from frontier systems under siege. Other children learned how to dream. Orion learned how to aim. He dismantled weapons before he learned algebra. He memorized tactical formations before he understood what birthdays meant. By the time he was 16, he could outmaneuver seasoned officers in simulated combat. At 18, he enlisted. At 22, he commanded. At 27, he became the youngest fleet commander in human history. War didn't harden him, it shaped him. He wasn't reckless. He wasn't cruel. He didn't fight with rage. He fought with clarity, and that clarity made him terrifying. During the siege of Titan Prime, when 3 human fleets were ambushed and surrounded by Kelthor warships, Orion did something no one expected. Instead of retreating, he drove his flagship straight into the enemy formation, not to attack blindly, but to fracture their coordination. He exploited a 3-second communication delay no one else had. Noticed. 3 seconds, that was all he needed. The maneuver broke the encirclement and saved over 40,000 soldiers. From that day on, his reputation was no longer national, it was galactic. Recruitment numbers surged whenever his name appeared in broadcasts. Children in refugee colonies whispered about becoming another Orion. Veterans twice his age saluted him without resentment. He became the living proof that humanity could still win. And yet, behind the medals, behind the salutes, behind the unwavering posture, there was something unsettling. He rarely slept. When he did, he dreamed of stars he had never visited. Worlds with violet skies, cities built from living crystal, a language that echoed in his mind, melodic, layered, ancient. He always dismissed it as stress. War does strange things. To the brain, he told no one, not even the general who raised him, because Orion Vallon had a rule he never broke. Doubt gets soldiers killed, and he could not afford doubt. Not when humanity's survival balanced on his decisions. Not when every victory he secured pushed the Kelthor closer to extinction. That word never felt heavy to him. It felt necessary. The Kelthor were invaders, destroyers, monsters who burned cities without negotiation. The enemy was clear, the mission was clear. Humanity survives. At any cost. And Orion was willing to pay it. He believed he knew exactly who he was. A soldier, a commander, a human. He had no idea that buried within his own blood was the very thing he had sworn to annihilate. And when that truth surfaced, the hero humanity trusted most would become the greatest threat to everything they believed. Because sometimes the perfect weapon doesn't know what it was built for, and sometimes the hero born from war was never meant to end it. He was meant to decide who deserved to survive it. Orion never asked where he came from. He was told he had been found in the wreckage of an orbital station, destroyed during the first wave of Kelthor attacks. No surviving relatives, no records, just a nameless infant pulled from debris and fire. That explanation was enough. In wartime, survival mattered more than history. He was adopted by General Marcus Fallon within weeks. Official documents were sealed under military authority. The story presented to the public was simple. A war orphan saved by a hero of humanity. No one looked deeper, and neither did Orion. He grew up inside fortified military installations, not civilian cities. His earliest memories weren't of parks or schools. They were of hangars, simulation rooms, and tactical briefings echoing through steel corridors. Discipline structured his life. Routine shaped him. Emotion was secondary. General Vallon did not raise him with cruelty, but with purpose. Orion was trained early, not brutally, but deliberately. Physical conditioning, strategy exercises, weapons familiarity, psychological resilience. By age 10, he could assemble a pulse rifle faster than most cadets. By 12, he was studying recorded Kelthar battle footage frame by frame. By 14, he had already lost friends to the war. That loss hardened something inside him. Not hatred focus. The Kelthar were the enemy. That was the only constant truth presented to him. They invaded, they destroyed, they had to be stopped. There were no gray areas in the briefings. No mention of diplomacy. Attempts. No discussion of shared biology. Just threat assessments and casualty. Projections. Orion accepted it all without resistance. He never searched for adoption records. Never requested deeper archives. Never questioned why no one else had survived that station. Because his life moved forward too fast. Military academy at 16. Accelerated command training at 19. Field leadership at 20-1. Every achievement reinforced the same narrative. He belonged exactly where he was. A soldier forged by tragedy. A commander shaped by loss. The origin story made sense. A child of war, raised to end it, and in a galaxy drowning in chaos. That clarity felt like certainty. What Orion didn't realize was that certainty can be engineered, and the most effective lies are the ones no one thinks to question. The siege of Titan Prime was supposed to be another victory. Orion had studied the Kale Tar formation for hours before engaging. Their ships moved in fractal patterns, elegant, adaptive, almost alive. He noticed a deviation in their rhythm, a microsecond lag in their outer ring alignment. He acted immediately. His flagship pierced the formation at precisely the weakest coordinate. Human cruisers followed. The enemy line fractured. For 12 minutes, it looked like total dominance. Then the Kelthar adapted. They always adapted. A concealed dreadnought, decloaked directly beneath Orion's ship. The blast hit from below, a gravitational, sheer wave that tore through shields and armor, as if they were paper. The bridge exploded into sparks and decompression alarms. Half his crew died in seconds. Orion was thrown across the command deck. A shard of reinforced alloy pierced his side. Internal bleeding began immediately. Emergency systems dragged him into a medical pod as the fleet retreated. He remained conscious just long enough to see Titan Prime's rings burning in reflected weapons fire. Then everything went dark. When he woke up, it wasn't to applause that it was to silence. The central medical facility of the United Fleet was quiet, too quiet. Sterile lights, white walls, no windows. He tried to sit up. Pain flared through his torso, but something else felt wrong. Not weak. Different. Doctors stood near the far wall, speaking in low voices. When they noticed he was awake, the room shifted. The conversation stopped mid-sentence. No one smiled. "Commander," one of them said carefully, "there were complications during regeneration. Regeneration therapy required a full genomic scan. Standard procedure for high-ranking officers. It allowed nanocellular systems to rebuild damaged tissue with precision. Routine. Except this time, it WASN single quotes D. Orion demanded the report. They hesitated. That hesitation told him everything. Finally, the chief geneticist activated the HOLO-display. Two DNA strands rotated in the air, one labeled Homo sapiens, the other unlabeled, but he recognized the structure from classified xenobiology briefings. Segmented chromosomal architecture, dual helical folding patterns unique to one species. "Kelthar, there's been contamination," Orion said immediately. His voice was steady. "There's no contamination," the doctor replied. The room felt smaller. "Your genome is stable," she continued. "Perfectly stable. The sequences are integrated at the cellular level, not grafted, not infected, integrated. 50% of your DNA," she said quietly, is the silence. Not the silence of confusion, the silence of impact. Orion stared at the projection without blinking. His mind didn't reject it. It analyzed it. Could it be sabotage, tampering, enemy infiltration? No, the doctor answered before he could ask. We ran the scan 12 times. Different systems, different labs. Every result was identical. Wasn't exposed. He wasn't altered. Recently he was born this way. His enhanced reflexes. His accelerated healing, his abnormal neural pattern recognition during combat. They weren't just talent. They were biology. The greatest human commander of the war was not fully human. Within hours, the High Command sealed the medical wing. All personnel involved were placed under oath-level classification. Data was encrypted under Omega clearance. Officially, Orion Vallon was recovering from battle injuries. Unofficially, he had become the most dangerous secret in the galaxy. When the room finally emptied, he remained alone with the hovering DNA strands. He replayed every memory of his life, the dreams, the instinctive understanding of Kelth tactics. The strange sense of familiarity whenever he studied their language patterns. It was never intuition, it was recognition, and, for the first time since childhood, Orion felt something unfamiliar in his chest. Not fear, not anger, uncertainty. If he was half Kelth, then, what had he been doing for the last 23 years? Saving humanity, or helping it commit genocide against his own blood? The monitors around him beeped steadily. His heartbeat remained calm, but something deeper had been wounded. Not his body, his identity, and unlike his physical injuries, there was no regeneration protocol for that. Orion didn't wait. The moment he was cleared to walk, he requested a private audience with General Marcus Valen. No intermediaries. No counsel. Just the man who raised him. The meeting took place in a sealed command chamber beneath Fleet headquarters. No recording devices, no aids, just reinforced walls and 23 years of unspoken truth. Between them, Orion stood in full uniform despite the fresh scar across his torso. I want the truth, he said. The general didn't pretend not to understand. For the first time in Orion's life, Marcus Vallon looked old. It took him several seconds to respond. You were never found by accident. There it was, no denial, no deflection, just confirmation. Decades earlier, before the war officially began, covert contact had been established between human leadership and the Kelthor. It wasn't public, it wasn't peaceful, but it was real. During early biological studies, scientists discovered something classified at the highest level. Human and Kelthor DNA were compatible. Not similar. Compatible. The implication was enormous. It meant shared ancestry. It meant the two species were not random cosmic strangers. It also meant something far more dangerous. Meant they could create hybrids. A joint black project was formed under extreme secrecy. Officially, both sides were preparing for the possibility of future conflict. Unofficially, they were preparing leverage, a living bridge, a biological weapon, someone who could infiltrate either side if war erupted. You were the only stable result. The general said. Previous attempts had failed. Genetic instability, neural collapse, non-viable embryos. But Orion survived. Stronger than projected, more adaptable than predicted. The war escalated soon after. Officially, first contact turned hostile. Unofficially, tensions were already being manipulated. Orion was placed aboard the orbital station that would later be destroyed, intentionally positioned to be discovered. After the attack, the station's destruction wasn't random collateral damage. It was a controlled event. He wasn't rescued, he was retrieved. You were meant to grow into leadership. The general continued. If the war reached stalemate, you would be activated. A contingency. If humanity needed infiltration, if they needed negotiation, leverage. Or if they needed total annihilation. Orion said nothing. His entire life, every promotion, every strategic opportunity had been guided, not forced, but influenced. Doors opened, recommendations placed, mentors assigned, not because he was lucky, because he was valuable. You raised me, Orion said finally. Was any of it real? The general didn't hesitate this time. Yes, that was the only part not engineered. The attachment, the pride, the belief in him. But belief didn't erase design. Orion wasn't just a soldier, he was an investment, a long-term solution, weapon disguised as a war orphan, and now, After 23 years of bloodshed, the weapon had become self-aware. The silence between them was heavier than any battlefield. "You should have told me," Orion said. "We couldn't risk it," the general replied. "You had to believe you were human." Orion's jaw tightened. "I am human." The general didn't respond, because they both knew that wasn't entirely true. And for the first time, Orion understood something with terrifying clarity. He had never been fighting a war. He had been moving, exactly where he was designed to move. Every victory, every loss, every promotion, part of a plan he never consented to. The question now wasn't who he was, it was whether he would continue being what they built him to be. The confession should have broken him. It didn't. It destabilized him. Orion returned to his quarters under restricted surveillance. Officially, he was recovering. Unofficially, the High Command was watching for signs of psychological fracture. They expected rage. They expected denial. What they didn't expect was silence, because something else had begun. It started subtly, a low-frequency hum in the back of his mind, not a sound of presence. During tactical briefings, he began noticing patterns before they appeared on screen. Not predictive analysis, instinctive recognition. Kelthar fleet formations no longer looked foreign. They looked familiar. Too familiar. Then came the dreams, not abstract fragments this time. Clear images. A planet beneath a violet sky. Towering structures grown, not built. Organic architecture shaped like spirals of living crystal. Crowds of tall, luminous beings moving in synchronized rhythm. He understood them not through translation, through memory. He began waking up with words in his mind, layered tones that vibrated rather than spoke. A language he had never studied, yet could almost pronounce. Almost. Medical. Scans showed no neurological damage, no psychosis, no foreign signal transmission, yet something inside him was activating. His body temperature fluctuated at irregular intervals. His neural activity spiked during proximity alerts involving Kelthar ships. His heart rate stabilized, not accelerated, during direct combat with them, as if his biology didn't interpret them as threat. That realization unsettled him more than the DNA results. Then it happened. During a minor skirmish near the Epsilon corridor, Orion was overseeing the battle remotely when a Kelthar cruiser executed a maneuver before it physically occurred on human sensors. He reacted instantly, shifted formation 3 seconds early. The enemy strike missed. 3 seconds. The same margin that had defined his greatest victory at Titan Prime. But this time, he knew something. He hadn't calculated it. He had felt it. And for a fraction of a second, just before the Kelthar ship altered course, he sensed intention. Not data. Not heat signatures. Intention. He froze after the battle ended. This wasn't enhanced reflex. It wasn't strategy. It was resonance. Later that night, alone, the hum in his mind intensified, and then a word formed clearly. Not in English. Not in any human language, but he understood it. Return. He stood abruptly. His pulse remained steady. No fear, only clarity. The hybrids weren't just genetic experiments. They were bridges, biological conduits between two neurologically compatible species. The Kelthar weren't adapting faster to human strategy. They were adapting to him, because somewhere, deep within their neural network, they could feel that one of their own was leading the enemy. And now that he knew the truth, the connection was strengthening. This wasn't just awakening, it was synchronization. And for the first time since the war began, Orion wasn't sure which side of the battlefield his mind truly belonged to. The most dangerous part. It didn't feel like corruption, it felt like remembering. The ambush near Saturn's rings was too precise to be random. Orion saw it immediately. Kale. Tar. Ships didn't fire to destroy, they fired to disable. Engines targeted, weapons neutralized, escape vectors blocked with mathematical restraint. They weren't trying to kill him, they were trying to take him. His officers urged counterattack, hesitated for half a second. That half second was enough. An electromagnetic pulse tore through his flagship. Systems died. The bridge went dark. Boarding crafts attached to the hull. No explosions followed, only controlled entry. Orion didn't resist when they surrounded him. He needed answers. He expected chains. He expected chains. He expected interrogation. Instead, he woke inside a vast, luminous chamber, curved walls pulsing with faint bioluminescent patterns. No restraints, no guards aiming weapons at his head. Just observation. 3 Kelthar figures stood before him, taller than humans, their forms elongated and fluid, their eyes emitting a faint inner light. He understood them before they spoke, not through translation devices, through resonance. "You are aware now," one of them said. The voice was layered, sound and vibration at once. They didn't call him human. They didn't call him enemy. They called him convergence. They confirmed what the general had admitted, and added what humanity never told him. The hybrid project wasn't purely human, it was joint. Before open war began, select leaders from both species secretly collaborated. They discovered shared genetic ancestry, fragments of the same ancient civilization scattered across evolution. That discovery terrified them. If their populations learned the truth, the balance of power would collapse. Unity would reshape both governments, so tension was escalated. Deliberately, incidents were staged, retaliations exaggerated. War became inevitable. By design, hybrids were contingency plans, bridges, weapons, future negotiators. If annihilation proved inefficient, you were the most viable, the Kelthar counselor said calmly. He wasn't an accident, he wasn't stolen. He was agreed upon, raised among humans to gain loyalty, engineered to rise, positioned to matter. You were never meant to die in battle, they continued. You were meant to decide the end. Orion felt no shock this time, only alignment. Both sides had lied. Both sides had manipulated entire civilizations. The war wasn't born from hatred. It was manufactured from fear. He asked one question. "Why capture me now?" A brief silence passed between them. "Because you have awakened," the counselor replied, "and the cycle must conclude." For the first time, Orion saw the full shape of the conflict. He wasn't a traitor. He wasn't a victim. He was leveraged. And now, both sides knew the weapon had become conscious. The war had reached its turning point, and he was standing at its center. They didn't try to convince him with speeches. They showed him proof. A living wall in the chamber shifted, transforming into streams of archived data, human encryption codes, Cliff Command's signatures, joint transmissions dating back decades before. The first public attack, Orion recognized the seals of the United Fleet, high command level, Omega clearance, meetings between human admirals and Kelthar strategists, quiet negotiations, biological research exchanges, risk assessments. One phrase repeated across both archives: mutual existential threat management. The threat wasn't extinction, it was unity. When early contact revealed genetic compatibility, panic spread among leadership on both sides. Shared ancestry meant shared origin. Shared origin meant shared claim to territory, resources, identity. If citizens learned they were evolutionary cousins, public pressure for alliance would be unstoppable. Alliance meant transparency. Transparency meant loss of control. So they manufactured hostility. Skirmish at a disputed mining colony staged. Civilian casualties, exaggerated in media broadcasts. Retaliatory strikes, strategically amplified. Within months, outrage replaced curiosity. Within years, hatred replaced doubt. War became self-sustaining. Both governments centralized power. Military budgets expanded. Emergency laws passed without resistance. Populations unified, not through truth, but through fear. The Kelthar Council did not deny their role. Human leaders did not deny theirs, at least. Not in the encrypted records. It had never been about survival. It had been about authority. Orion watched battle footage he had studied his entire life, now overlaid with internal directives, proving certain engagements were allowed to escalate. Intentionally, some fleets were sacrificed to preserve narrative. Some colonies were deemed acceptable losses. He found references to the hybrid initiative, embedded within strategic projections. Hybrid are set to be elevated to command influence by year 2025 of conflict. That was him, not a soldier, rising through merit, a variable maturing on schedule. He felt something then, not rage. Betrayal. Not because he was engineered, but because millions had died to protect a lie. The Kelthar Council spoke calmly. The war achieved its objective: total hostility, no possibility of reconciliation. On the human side, emergency powers had become permanent. On the Kelthar side, centralized authority had never been stronger. The system worked until he survived, until he awakened. The hybrids were designed as endgame, tools, leverage, if one side gained advantage, controlled resolution mechanisms, but neither side expected a hybrid to question both. That was the flaw. Orion looked at the archives one last time. The enemy he had sworn to destroy was not a species, it was a narrative, and narratives can be rewritten. The war was real, the deaths were real, the hatred was engineered, and now he understood something with absolute clarity. If he chose a side, the lie would survive. If he exposed it, the galaxy would fracture. Either way, the war, as it existed, could not continue. For the first time, Orion wasn't thinking like a commander. He was thinking like a catalyst. Both sides moved faster than he expected. The Kelthar Council made their offer first. Return with us. Expose the corruption within human leadership. Help us dismantle the architects of the war. In exchange, they promised an immediate ceasefire across all fronts. No more planetary bombardments. No more expansion campaigns. End the deception, they said. Stand with your other half. It sounded righteous. It also sounded strategic, because removing human high command would destabilize Earth's government overnight. Civil unrest, power vacuums, internal collapse, peace through controlled implosion. Before Orion could respond, a secured transmission reached him from human command. Encrypted priority Omega. General Valent's face appeared older than ever. They have you, the general said quietly. Listen carefully. The United Fleet had activated the Phoenix Protocol, a final contingency, a killer weapon positioned near the Kelthar homeworld. It had been built in secrecy over 15 years. If deployed, it would destabilize the planet's core and render it uninhabitable. Total extinction, billions dead in hours. The system required biometric confirmation from the highest-ranking active commander with Omega clearance. Orion. His genetic signature was the final key. You can end this, the general said. One command: humanity survives. Survives, not wins. Survives. Orion understood immediately. If he returned and authorized the strike, the war would end permanently. No more Kelthar threat, no more uncertainty. Humanity would call it salvation. History would call him a hero. If he sided with the Kelthar and helped dismantle human leadership, he would prevent genocide but plunge Earth into chaos. Millions could die in civil conflict. Either path meant blood. Either path meant betrayal. Humanity raised him. The Kelthar were in his blood. For the first time, the battlefield wasn't space, it was identity. The Kelthar Council waited for his alignment. Human High Command waited for his authorization. Two species balanced on his decision. He analyzed outcomes the way he always did. Probabilities, fallout, secondary consequences. Every projection ended the same way. If he chose one side, the cycle would continue. Different victims. Same structure. Same fear. Same manipulation. He wasn't meant to choose peace, he was meant to choose dominance. That was the design, weapon, leverage, executioner. The room fell silent as both transmissions remained open. Two civilizations listening to his breathing. Commander, General Valent said softly, what is your decision? For the first time in his life, Orion did not answer immediately, because he was no longer thinking like the weapon they built. He was searching for a third option, and both sides were about to realize they had given him too much power. Orion made his decision in less than 60 seconds, not between humanity, not between the Kelthar. Between control and truth. He looked at the Kelthar Council. Need full access to your deep archives. Then he reopened the secure human channel, and a need unrestricted transmission clearance. Across the United Fleet, both sides hesitated. He spoke calmly. If you want my decision, you'll give me access. They agreed, because both believed he would ultimately choose them. That was their mistake. Within minutes, Orion stood inside a shared transmission nexus, a system powerful enough to broadcast across military and civilian frequencies simultaneously. Human, fleets, Kelthar, armadas, colony networks, frontline soldiers. Every major system. He uploaded the evidence. Joint meetings between leaders, staged incidents. Strategic sacrifices. Hybrid project, documentation. Internal memos labeling entire populations as narrative assets. Then he activated the broadcast. Across thousands of ships, screens flickered on war-torn planets. Emergency signals overrode propaganda channels. Soldiers in trenches, pilots in cockpits, civilians in underground shelters, they all saw it. Unfiltered, unedited, proof that the war had been engineered, proof that both governments had manipulated fear to consolidate power, proof that millions had died not for survival, but for control. Human admirals attempted to cut the signal. Clipper command nodes initiated override protocols. Too late, Orion had routed the transmission through decentralized fleet relays on both sides. Cutting it would require shutting down their own defensive networks. Neither side dared. The galaxy watched its leaders exposed in real time. Shock spread first, then disbelief, then anger. On a human destroyer near the Vega corridor, a captain refused an order to advance. On a Kelthor siege cruiser above Arundel, weapons powered down without command approval. Frontline soldiers began demanding verification. Officers hesitated, trust fractured, and once trust fractures in wartime, the machine collapses. Orion remained on screen. He didn't shout, he didn't accuse, he simply said, "You were told this war was necessary. You were told extinction was the only alternative. That was a lie." He paused. "We share origin. We share biology. We share manipulation. Across both civilizations, something more powerful than strategy began to spread. Doubt. Planetary governors called for ceasefires. Entire human battalions disengaged. Kelthar fleets shifted to defensive positions. The war didn't explode into chaos. It stalled, because soldiers will fight enemies. They hesitate to fight cousins. Within hours, engagements across multiple sectors dropped by 60%. Within a day, several neutral systems declared independent truces. High command on both sides labeled Orion a traitor, but they could not label the evidence false. The narrative was broken, and without narrative, war loses direction. Orion had not chosen a side. He had removed the illusion that sides were absolute. The cost would be unpredictable. Power, vacuums, political collapse, reform, movements, possibly even civil unrest. But genocide had been stopped. The Phoenix Protocol remained inactive. The Kelthor homeworld still stood. For the first time in 23 years, the galaxy was not advancing toward annihilation. It was suspended in uncertainty, and uncertainty was freedom. Orion ended the broadcast with one final sentence. "If we continue this war now, we do it knowing the truth." Silence followed across the stars. The choice was no longer his alone, and that was exactly the point. For 72 hours, the galaxy held its breath. Skirmishes faded. Orders stalled. Government scrambled to regain narrative control. Human high command labeled Orion a traitor to the species. The Kelthor Council called him unstable, but neither could restart the war at full scale. Too many had seen the truth. Too many had begun asking questions. And then something appeared beyond the mapped edges of known space. It wasn't a fleet in attack formation. It wasn't broadcasting threats. It simply arrived. Massive structures, larger than any human dreadnought, emerged from deep space folds, with technology neither side recognized. Their surfaces shimmered like living matter fused with machinery, ancient, deliberate, precise. Every major sensor array in both civilizations detected the same energy. Signature. Not human. Not Kelthor. Share. Orion felt it before the alerts reached him. The resonance in his mind intensified, not chaotic, not invasive. Familiar. A transmission spread across every network without hacking, without resistance. It bypassed encryption as if encryption didn't exist. A single message translated instantly into all known languages. Observation complete. Panic ignited in political centers. Defense systems powered up automatically. But the unknown fleet did not raise weapons. A second message followed. Genetic divergence confirmed. Conflict threshold exceeded. Catalyst successful. Orion understood before anyone else did. The shared ancestry. The compatibility, the hybrid program it had never been. Coincidence. Humans and Kelthor were not just evolutionary relatives. They were branches. Long ago, an advanced civilization had seeded multiple worlds with adaptive genetic frameworks, variations designed to evolve under different pressures. Conflict was a variable. Division was a stress test. The hybrids were not a human invention alone, were part of a deeper biological architecture embedded within both species. DNA a failsafe, a convergence point, When conflict escalated beyond sustainable limits, hybrids would emerge, capable of bridging neural and genetic gaps. Orion was not just engineered by governance, he was unlocked by design. The war had not only been political manipulation, that it had been monitored, evaluated, measured. Another message appeared. Unity through coercion results in collapse. Unity through awareness results in advancement. The massive fleet held position. Waiting. 2. Conquer. 2. Assess. Orion stepped forward. Before a joint emergency assembly, human representatives on one side, Kelthar delegates on the other, both forced into the same chamber for the first time. Since the war began, he was no longer commander of a fleet, he was proof of convergence. They've been watching, a human official whispered. No. Orion corrected calmly. They've been waiting. The ancient civilization, the architects, had not intervened during the war, because the choice had to be made internally. If either species had chosen total annihilation, the experiment would have concluded in failure. Extinction would have followed, not as punishment, as reset, but Orion had disrupted the trajectory. He had exposed the lie before genocide occurred. The cycle had broken just in time. A final transmission echoed across space. You are eligible for integration, not assimilation. Integration. Shared knowledge, shared technology, access to archives spanning millions of years, but only if both species formally ceased. Hostilities. Silence filled the chamber. Human leaders looked at Kelthar delegates not as monsters, as mirrors. The decision that once rested on Orion now rested on entire civilizations. After hours of negotiation, hesitation, and visible fear, a joint declaration was transmitted. Ceasefire. Permanent. The Phoenix protocol was dismantled publicly. Kelthar expansion fleets stood down. For the first time in recorded history, both species signed the same document, not because they trusted each other fully, but because they now understood the alternative. The unknown fleet remained for 3 days. Then, slowly, gateways opened, not for invasion, for exchange. Orion declined political office. He declined military reinstatement. He accepted one role only, ambassador of convergence, not as ruler. Not as savior. As bridge. Half human. Half Kelthar, fully aware. But late one night, standing alone beneath a sky now shared by two former enemies, he replayed the architect's first words. Observation complete. If this had been a test, what came after integration? Evolution, or another threshold? Because in the vast silence beyond known space, there were likely other branches, other civilizations, other experiments, and somewhere, something was still watching. The war had ended. The story had not. And for the first time, the future of two species would not be decided by fear but by choice. If this story moved you, if it made you question what seems obvious, hit the like button now. That tells me you want more deep, unexpected stories like this. Subscribe to the channel, because the next story will take this idea even further, into a universe where the truth might be more dangerous than war. And click on the next video, because some stories don't end, they evolve. I'll see you in the next galaxy. **